Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. Greater MSP CFO Peter Frosch is with us, and we'll discuss the Minneapolis-St. Paul Region Economic Development Partnership. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few housekeeping notes regarding our CPE offering today. We are offering 1 credit for today's presentation, and to be eligible for today's credit, you need to answer 3 of the 4 polling questions, 5 polling questions. We're offering 5 today, and have a total viewing time of at least 50 minutes. Participants will receive a CPE notification email when the credits are available. The credits usually take between 7 and 10 business days. We are unable to grant CPE credit in cases where technical difficulties preclude eligibility. CPE program sponsorship guidelines prohibit us from issuing credit to those not verified by the technology to have satisfied the minimum requirements as stated. And in accordance with the standards of the National Registry of CPE Sponsors, CPE credit will be granted on a 50-minute hour. And now I'd like to introduce Roseanne Baum. She's the Executive Director of FEI Twin Cities. Welcome, Roseanne.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone here today. We've had a great response for our program. So thank you to all of our members, strategic partners, and guests that are joining us today. I have to say, we would much rather be hosting in-person events, and we'll get back to those as soon as it's safe to do so. And we miss seeing all of you. We're excited to have Peter Frosch this morning. I'm going to introduce him in just a few minutes, but first I'd like to do a few announcements. As you may know, FEI is a membership organization. Our mission is to advance the success of senior finance leaders, their organizations, and the profession. If you know of someone that would benefit by increasing their network or engaging in learning opportunities, please invite them to attend a meeting or to get in contact with me or a board member for more information. We have some great new member specials right now, including free registration to FEI's Leadership Summit in October, which features outstanding speakers. And for those of you that need CPE, it offers a whopping 26 credits. This is our kickoff event for our 2021 program year. We host multiple opportunities each year to connect and network with peers and industry leaders and provide content and forums to stay on top of and ahead of industry trends. We hope you'll join us for additional programs soon. We have many events lined up through the remainder of the year, and these can be viewed at feitwincities.com. So I want to just highlight a couple, and then we're going to get on to our program. So next Wednesday, September 30th, we have a real estate market updates presented by our strategic partner, Cresa, which will cover topics including how are the real estate submarkets changing, how corporate space users can achieve cost reductions, and the impact of COVID-19 on construction projects and tenant improvement build-outs. We hope you'll join us for that. And on October 7th, a very timely session on burnout prevention and recovery for high achievers. Dr. Marino coined the term high achiever syndrome and has developed a protocol for taking back control and creating sustainable peak performance. She'll take us from frustrated and overwhelmed to innovative, energized, and focused. That sounds really good right now. And then I'm going to move on to our speaker for today. So Peter Frosch became Chief Executive Officer of Greater MSP, the Minneapolis-St. Paul Regional Economic Development Partnership in March of 2019. As CEO, Mr. Frosch is responsible for leading the global strategy for economic development and job creation for the region, with 3.6 million residents and a gross metropolitan product of more than 260 billion. And Peter would like to hear from all of you today, so please feel free to use the chat box for comments, and please use the Q&A function to ask questions, and I'll be back to help facilitate the Q&A portion with Peter. And now I'll turn it over to Peter. Peter, thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure. I'm going to execute the screen share. All right. So I can just get a thumbs up. Roseanne, can you see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you today. I look forward to having a very engaged virtual experience. There are a lot of polls, and I'm going to share a lot of data and a lot of content today, and look forward to a lot of questions and discussion. We're going to lay down some kind of basics about Greater MSP to start. Greater MSP is the Regional Economic Development Partnership for the 15-county Minneapolis-St. Paul region. It was established in 2011. And we were one of the last major metros in the United States to have an economic development partnership like Greater MSP. Over the past 9 years, Greater MSP quickly evolved from being a best-in-class economic development organization to a true working partnership at scale. That's where business leaders and leaders in universities and philanthropy and government are coming together to do big and bold things that are making this region's economy more competitive globally and more equitable. So today, I want to work towards a conversation with you about some big questions and hear from you. I'm going to share some analysis about the region's economy. I want to get your reaction to that, about the jobs challenge facing us. I want to hear your thoughts about how you think what we're going through right now in the economy compares and contrasts to the Great Recession a decade ago. I'm going to share some big action that's going on in the region. I want to get a sense from you about what you think is most important for the region to be doing right now. And then get a sense of how you I think financial executives should play a role in this work. So first poll, how familiar are you with Greater MSP and its work? Give me a little bit of a sense of where we're at. I guess we could take that poll now.
We'll give them just a few more seconds, Peter. Okay, it looks like we have all the answers in. I'm going to end that poll and share those results.
Okay. So we have a mix, a lot of people, and I've heard something about a category, which is fantastic. So I'm going to talk a lot about the region today. And so when I say 15 county region, this is that geography. These are those counties. This is the metropolitan statistical area as the federal government defines it. And that's how we organize as Greater MSP, because this is how the federal government collects data. This is how we get compared to other regions around the country. Essentially, this is the geography of our economy. And so it's not a shape that's as familiar to us as the state of Minnesota, or maybe even our city or county, but that's a really important shape in this work. When it comes to sectors of strength, economic development is really focused on building up our existing and differentiating sectors of strength. And something that has made this economy a real standout, over the past generation has been the fact that we have these strong and growing and diverse sectors in financial services, advanced manufacturing and technology, health and life science, headquarters of business services, and food and water solutions. And part of that is the headquarters economy that we have, with the headquarters of 16 Fortune 500s in this region, the largest private company in the world with Cargill, and many other major North American or global headquarters, sub-headquarters for North America. When we talk about Greater MSP, it's the region's team. It was built as a platform to allow leaders to come together across sector to develop a shared strategy, get a shared understanding of what's happening in our economy, and then build solutions at scale. There's something like Greater MSP in most other major metros. We included just a handful of those examples here. They exist in many other major metro areas as well. And when we talk about a team, here's a quick look at who's on that team. It's mostly companies, but it's also counties and cities, major philanthropies, and then civic partners, which you see at the bottom, many of which you or your organizations are likely involved in. And the civic partners are not investors financially in Greater MSP, but they are core to all the work that we're doing in terms of building solutions and sharing those solutions out across the region, putting those solutions on the ground. The companies are run the gamut from large to small. We have most of the largest companies in our region, in leadership roles in this effort. And there's an increasing focus on engaging medium to large companies as well. The model, because it talks about investors here, we have an investor model, a budget about $6.3 million. And rather than members, we talk about investors, companies and leaders who come in, pooling capital to do big things together What are we doing together? The mission is about accelerating regional competitiveness and inclusive growth. And over the past several years, the partnership, hundreds of people shaped a vision for Greater MSP as a region to lead the world in inclusive economic growth by welcoming all, empowering talent, and igniting innovation. And that was a bold vision before 2020 and after the killing of George Floyd and the uprising of awareness around racial injustice and inequity. I think we all know how much distance we have to travel to realize this vision, but we still believe this is very much the right vision. And there's an enormous opportunity for this place to really lead the country in an economy that's based on equity. Over the past several years, as we've made that transition from an organization to a true partnership, we've captured scale. So when we're talking about Greater MSP today, keep in mind that this is about hundreds of organizations and it's now about thousands of leaders. There is a 501c3 organization at the core of Greater MSP. There are 22 professional staff and growing. But the way the work happens is really through teams of leaders and organizations that are working in these platforms, whether it's startups, talent, global food research, and doing kind of problem solution, working against a shared regional economic development strategy, and then building and delivering projects. This is really all about action, and it's all about teams. There are almost no committees involved in Greater MSP. It's a lot of project-focused teams, and we can talk more about how that all works. This work is national and global, and that's one of the reasons Greater MSP was created. It's difficult for especially any city or county to have its opportunities known around the country and the world, if it's up to Apple Valley or Cottage Grove or even Minneapolis. But by working together as a region, we can be national, we can be global, and we are. And so we do the work of business investment, retaining, attracting companies globally. We're doing increasingly work around attracting capital in a global fashion. And when we come together and work as a region through a partnership, the results really add up. And so on the business expansion, retention, attraction side, we've had over 190 project wins now over the past 9 years, adding $3.6 billion of investment in the economy, 28,000 direct jobs that pay an average of $50,000 or more, with another 41,000 plus indirect jobs that came about. The work we're doing with the Regional Air Services Partnership, which some of you may have heard about, to add international routes prior to 2020, had added 3 new international routes to MSP Airport. And the work we're doing on talent is national. So we're reaching millions of people around the country through digital advertising and in-person visits to recruit and retain the world-class talent to this region. So one way to think about it is Greater MSP as a partnership kind of vertically integrates analysis and strategy and action for the purpose of delivering regional competitiveness. All those things are happening. Second poll. So of all the work that you're going to hear about today, I can go a little bit deeper in areas of greatest interest. So talent, attracting, expanding, and retaining companies, building the region's brand image around the world, setting regional strategy, analysis of the region's economic vitality, and building leading sectors of strength. These are all things that Greater MSP does. What are you most interested to learn more about?
I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that poll because there were so many choices. Okay, I think we're about end, and I'll share those results with you, Peter.
Okay, so a lot of interest in the job attraction expansion work and in the analysis of the region's economy. Great. So let's go right into it. We'll talk about some analysis. So some of you may be familiar with this product that the Greater MSP Partnership developed for 2015. One of the problems that was clear early on in this regional economic work was people were working with different facts. And when you ask them, how are we doing in this economy? People had different answers based on different data. And it's really hard to build any base of action or a strategy if people have different ideas about, what the current situation is. And so the answer to that back in 2015 was, let's come together and build a basic tool that would level set, leaders across this region on how the economy is performing, and how, in some ways, the broader society is performing on issues that matter most to long-term competitiveness. So we built a dashboard that touches on economy and business vitality, talent and livability. And this, over the past several years, has really grown in attention. It's a lot of organizations are using this data to help level set as a shared fact base. And it's become a national best practice across the country in other places. Part of what this is about is not only tracking how we're performing objectively, but also how are we performing relative to other major metros across the country that we recognize as peers. And so we established a peer set back in 2015 that's only been moderately adjusted over the last 5 years. And so we get both objective and relative data. We do this as a partnership. So yes, it's about Greater MSP, an organization, but it's about other organizations that you are very familiar with, whether it's the Business Partnership or the Regional Chamber of Commerce, the University of Minnesota, many networks and organizations working together around this shared fact base. Because it's 2020 and a lot has changed, I'm not going to belabor a lot of the data about how we came into this year, and I'd rather talk about what's going on now. But one of the things that the 5-year analysis showed last year, when we were looking at what have we learned from the first 5 years of doing this dashboard, is we started to develop a theory that our region as an economy might not be growing at the rate it needs to be growing. And we started to think about a product life cycle, which is going to be familiar to you, where you have, an introductory phase, a growth phase, maturation, and then there's either decline or there's some sort of a reinvention. So we applied that idea, using these 5-year job growth stats to our peer set, and found that we could be perceived to be kind of in this maturation area as a regional economy and facing a decision. Are we going to reinvent, find new sources and engines of growth, and recapture a stronger upward growth slope, or are we going to start declining? And we've seen, we started to wonder towards the end of last year, where was San Francisco really headed? Where was Boston headed? It looked like we knew where Chicago was headed on this growth curve. Because when we think back 20 or 30 years, the fastest growing US metros, the strongest regional economies in the US, they're not the same as they are today. And so this is about thinking into the future. And one of our biggest pushes last year was, we need to develop some urgency for action. We need bolder solutions. We need people coming together more closely to really drive change that's going to result in faster growth. And one of the upsides of 2020 is that urgency has been created. There is a lot of urgency in this region for action across a number of areas, and that creates enormous opportunity potentially to do the things that we needed to do as of last year. Wanted to get your sense coming into 2020. If you can remember what life was like in December and January. Do you remember what sentiment best describes your outlook? How did you think we were doing? Were you bullish on where we were headed as an economy? Strong, building momentum, gaining ground? Are you generally positive? We have areas to improve, but compared to many US places, we're looking good. Or did you have some concern that we weren't headed in the right direction? So coming into this year, how are you feeling about the trajectory of our economy?
Thank you, Peter, for your patience. I still have some answers coming in. I'll give you just a few more seconds, folks, for that poll. Okay, I'm going to end that poll and show you your results, Peter. There you go.
Okay, that's really helpful. Mm-hmm. So almost everybody, very, very strong, generally positive, areas to improve, but compared to other US regions, we're looking good. That's pretty close to what we had heard, anecdotally and through data collection. Now, as we think about this year, how do we make sense of what has been going on, in our society and our economy this year? Because there are these, in some ways, three huge, shifts. We have the public health challenge or crisis through the pandemic. We have a realization and awakening around racial injustice, which is about police, and it's about equity in the economy and so many other areas. And then we have major economic uncertainty, mostly resulting from the pandemic, but it has huge inequality, racial inequality dimensions as well. And one of the kind of themes that I've picked up over the past several months is we've been working with folks in this region, but also around the country. This has been an incredibly challenging year in the United States. Every major metro, every big city is struggling with similar challenges, from pandemic to awareness of racial injustice and economic uncertainty. And so when we're concerned about downtown Minneapolis, Chicago is deeply concerned about its downtown. New York is deeply concerned about its downtown. We're facing a lot of what other parts of the country are facing, but since we're so uniquely disconnected, it's hard to have that perspective, and it really feels like we're living in a bubble. One example of this, we talk about the unrest in Minneapolis-St. Paul and how genuinely concerning that is. This is a map taken from an international conflict group that did stats on what was happening across the US this year. And it just reveals, the level of unrest across the entire country. I was just talking to an economic development colleague in Grand Rapids, Michigan, last week, and they had riots in their downtown in May and June, and there was damage, and very few of us would have heard about that. But unfortunately, this was a really common experience across the country this year. So the whole point here is about what we're going through is not unique in many respects. And the best thing we can do is take the urgency and concern that we have and really focus it on driving change. But with so many challenges in front of us, I'd like to get your sense of what are you thinking most about? And it's hard to pick. This is a hard set of choices here. But are you most concerned or thinking most about public health and COVID, racial justice and equity, public safety and crime, jobs, or something else?
I'll give you a few moments to answer that poll. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. All right, folks, I'm going to end that poll. Please get your answers in, and then we'll show those results. There you go, Peter.
Okay, so a lot of concern about public safety and crime, but also, not surprisingly, concerned about jobs and about public health as well. So that's helpful. So let's now turn to what we know about how the economy is doing. So this is analysis taken from Moody's Analytics. This is a service that Greater MSP subscribes to. And we just got some data back last week from Moody's analyzing our economy. And so they categorize our metro as in a recovery phase. You can see on the bottom a number of different indicators that they're tracking and how many of these are moving from red or yellow into the green. So many economic indicators have turned positive, from employment, the unemployment rate, hours. Increasingly, we're talking about the pace of recovery. So we've moved into that phase, and now it's about driving the force of that recovery and making sure that we maintain that momentum. We're working also with McKinsey & Company around some of their global analysis that they're doing. And McKinsey developed some modeling for our economy that suggests that it could take up to 6 to 8 years for this region to fully recoup the jobs we lose in 2020, with an emphasis that it's not only the depth of the job loss, but it's the duration of recovery that's a real challenge. That said, if our region and state take a really effective action soon, we can have a big impact on the depth and duration of the challenge. Another kind of big idea that's coming out of the data we have is that people in our community are experiencing this economy in very different ways. From, you know, kind of the inconvenience of working from home or struggling with virtual school, for low skill workers, you know, especially in the hospitality restaurant area, just, you know, an enormously challenging situation of job loss and disruption. And while the numbers, the exact numbers that we'll show here are, you know, dynamic because the situation's changing, it's clear that the scope, the scale of the challenge we're facing in recovery is one of the biggest we've seen since World War II. So this is national data about GDP fall off. You see a couple of different scenarios here because again, this is dynamic, but even from optimistic to least optimistic, and this is again McKinsey data, you have to go back, you know, 70 years to see something that's this significant. And you can see how this compares from a GDP standpoint to the Great Recession. When we think about job loss in this economy, you can see the expansionary period that existed between 2010, 2011, and the start of this year, the huge fall off, and then a couple of different scenarios about that recovery. You know, we are looking at, according to this data, over 300,000 jobs that need to be restored or created as a result of this. And to put that in perspective, the region's economy created 290,000 jobs during the last 10-year expansion. So, you know, this is going to be, you know, a challenge bigger than what we experienced in the Great Recession. And we're going to be doing it with some major headwinds. There are, because the data is changing so quickly and month by month, you know, there's a debate, you know, is this overly optimistic? Is it pessimistic? And I'd really love to get your sense of that. So based on what you're tracking and the data you're seeing, you know, if we're looking at, you know, roughly 6 to 8 years to recover without some major intervention, does that seem about right or overly pessimistic or even overly optimistic?
Okay, folks, I'll give you just a few more seconds for that last poll. Okay, I'm going to end that poll and share those results with you, Peter.
Okay. Okay. So no one thinks it's overly optimistic. Okay, so it's about right or overly pessimistic. That's about what, you know, we're hearing and seeing. And again, we're truly tracking this month by month. We just got the most recent Metro unemployment stats in. And so the MSP Metro unemployment rate in August was 7.9%. And that was an improvement from 8.2% in July. So from July to August, the labor force increased by over 9,000 people, which is very positive. Still, the unemployment rate is 5 percentage points higher than we were at this time last year. There are still about 100,000 people in our metro who are unemployed and actively seeking work. So have we seen the end of the job losses? We hope so. We hope that we can start kind of bending up the curve, but there are some major questions. Something that we do know is that the job losses have fallen really disproportionately on a certain set of people in our community. The young, people who don't have post-secondary degrees, women, and people of color. And that's because there's the highest concentration of people in these categories in, you know, the impacted occupations, food and beverage, retail sales, construction trade has been coming back, but everything in hospitality is obviously, you know, in a really, really difficult spot. As we think about coming back, we have the headwinds of the virus. So if the public health situation continues to improve, that will be one of the most important foundations for sustained recovery. If we struggle this fall and winter on the public health side, it's going to be incredibly difficult to maintain kind of an uninterrupted recovery. So as we think about the work that's to be done in this region, how do we kind of characterize it? There's a lot of different kinds of responses. We need to relieve suffering, from people and small businesses that are really struggling because they can't work, they've lost their jobs, or public health concerns prevent things from opening. We need to be able to restart, restoring jobs and opening sectors of the economy back up. The Greater MSP partnership is really focused on the recovery and reimagination components. How do we return aggregate demand to pre-crisis levels? And how can we be thoughtful in this moment about the parts of our economy that need to be just reimagined because they maybe weren't sufficiently strong and resilient coming into 2020. And we've seen the weakness of those areas this year. And workforce development might be one of those areas that deserves some reimagination. So if the analysis, okay, if that's a set of facts, then what do we do about it? How do we respond to that data and create some sort of a plan? Coming into 2020, the Greater MSP Partnership had developed kind of a 9-area regional strategy that touched on multiple aspects of work that had to be done in this region. Over 300 organizations over 5 years helped shape this agenda for action, which touches on things that you'd fully expect, like job growth and startups and talent, also prioritizing racial inclusion, and upskilling and workforce and regional brand image. But affordability and transportation mobility and building a new climate economy, creating jobs through climate solutions, had entered the frame from a regional strategy standpoint. What we started to do last year was set 10-year ambitions against those 9 areas. And so around talent migration, we had come together as a region and said, we want to be one of the country's top 10 metros for attracting and retaining people by 2030. In startups, we said, in 10 years, we want to be the best place for people from every background to start and scale a venture. And in job growth, we said, we want to be top 5 in our peer set for job growth to ensure opportunity exists for all residents of our region. We have the numbers of what that would look like. And these are all incredibly ambitious aims, but we thought this is what we had to do if we were going to be competitive. Now, this year, we've been reevaluating strategy in real time because obviously everything has changed so much. And what we've found is, one of the biggest things we have to shift in this region if we're going to be the place we want to be going forward is really the mindset. And I don't know if you can read that whole phrase there, but we need to be seeking transformational solutions and break with incremental change. It's not working around the edges. We really need to look at some of the core growth engines, some of our racial issues from a core standpoint, and really seeking the bigger solutions that are going to drive long-term competitive value. From a priority standpoint, are we working on the right things? There's nothing that we felt was important coming into 2020 that's not important or much less important this year. There are a few things that need to be added to the list in our view, and I'm going to show you those. And then the approach, the Greater MSP Board, which is a group of 45 very senior leaders from CEOs and some CFOs from Mayo and Cargill, but also mayors, county commissioners, heads of philanthropies. They all, over the course of this year, said it's not just what we are trying to do, but it's how we do it. We need to figure out an agile approach to shaping and implementing strategy, getting far more people involved, communicating this work so we can really achieve scale. So in terms of an evolving strategy, this is not final, but if we kind of go from left to right, rising to the new regional challenge, if we need to preserve and create over 350,000 jobs to recover from this contraction, we want to come back faster than that projected 6 to 8 year time frame. We want to make strides in racial equity, and we want to emerge in a stronger position for long-term growth. Those are things that we're aiming to achieve. We've got kind of 3 potentially large pillars. We want to speed recovery. So we want to accelerate job creation and preservation. We want to be investing in our people. So this has always been kind of the core competitive advantage of the Minneapolis-St. Paul region, that we have an amazing, hardworking, highly educated workforce that's aligned with the sectors of strength we have. And we also want to be building a new competitive edge. We want to be thinking about the foundations of the next economy, looking around the corner and doing the work today that's going to benefit us in 5 and 7 and 10 years and beyond. When we talk about how to make those things happen, on the right-hand side, you can see some of these kind of implementation strategies. Speeding job expansion, retention, and attraction, which was something that this group was uniquely interested in, is part of that. There are a few things that we think need to be added as a result of 2020. The growth of small business, or even thinking about small business as a sector that deserves regional attention and support, was not really part of Greater MSP's frame coming into 2020. And if we're going to really preserve and create jobs, recognizing how significant the small business sector is, that has to be part of the plan. Thinking about ways to transition dislocated workers to available jobs has to be a strategy. Unlike the Great Recession, there are thousands and thousands of available jobs now. And if we can facilitate that market and that matching process, we can significantly reduce unemployment and the long-term damage to families from having losing employment and falling behind in careers, and accelerate the region's recovery. When it comes to investing in people, it's about talent retention and attraction, advancement. It's also about building a pipeline. It's reimagining workforce development, and thinking about what the African community, I think about the African community specifically, and how we can support long-term success. Around competitive edge, it's always going to be about building sectors of strength. Something new here is digital connectivity. Obviously, it was important, but it seems that it's not just about these transportation connections. People would not question the value of transportation infrastructure and economic development. But I think we've all realized in 2020, your internet connection is your road to get to work and get to school and get healthcare. And if people aren't connected and don't have sufficient digital connection, you can't do the most basic things in life. And that digital issue has been out there. We've talked about broadband for years, but this may be that breakthrough experience. We need to elevate that issue, and we need to solve it. Like, we have to get a real solution. So then pivoting to action, and this is the last part, again, to some discussion. What do we do about any of this as a region? This is where it gets back to these kind of platforms of action that the Greater MSP Partnership has created around job creation and around talent in other areas. So right now, there are, we've built a series of initiatives where we have capability around talent retention and attraction. Back in 2015, we stood up Make It MSP. In 2017, we created something called the Regional Air Services Partnership to focus on the airport. In 2019, we create an ecosystem of startups and capital and companies and their entrepreneurs called Forge North. And next month, we're launching a global food and agriculture initiative called MBOLD that combines really big food and agriculture companies in the University of Minnesota and producer groups to build up our global food and agriculture economy. So these are not programs of a nonprofit, but they're almost like they're growing enterprises in and of themselves, and they're all connected as a part of this Greater MSP partnership. So this is where I want to end with you to give you a sense of some of the action that's taking place. How are we translating things right now? The region is building on its strengths. So what we've seen over the past several months, you've been seeing yesterday, you saw profit reports from General Mills. We've seen profit reports from Target and Best Buy, that our major employers, many of our major companies, your companies, are doing relatively well, in a very difficult and uncertain economic environment. And that obviously is huge for our region's benefit. Not uniformly, but as we look at other parts of the country where you see, larger indexing on hospitality or travel industries, obviously those regions are being hit, more severely. There was a lot of interest in the job creation work that the Greater MSP Partnership does. The work we're doing, our deal flow to expand, attract, and retain companies is busier now than it's been in over 3 years. We're on track in the Greater MSP Partnership to close more deals, job creation projects, in September of 2020 than we have in 9 years of Greater MSP's history. And we know some of why that's happening, but not everything. But what it shows that, these projects are in med tech, and they're in health IT, and they're in financial services and fintech, and they're in food and agriculture. So we're seeing global and national investment into our region, and an expansion of companies we have in this region because the sectors of strength we have are experiencing sustained demand, and in some cases increased demand. So we're on track to exceed the 1,000 job creation goal we had for 2020. We'll exceed that this month, and we'll keep adding. We're also seeing even more public-private collaboration, and that's obviously a key strength for our region. It's something we've always performed well at. One example, I talked about the Regional Air Services Partnership that exists between the airlines and the MAC, and especially major businesses, business travel in this region. We built that collaboration coming into 2020 to add flights to MSP Airport that the businesses demanded. And we're using that partnership this year to manage through this crisis in the airline industry and at the airport. And that's proving to be a competitive edge. There are relationships, there's trust, there's information sharing back and forth, and Delta especially, and the airport and the business community recognize that this is a true partnership. And so we're going to see each other through this time with the aim that our airport is even stronger, and even stronger competitive position in the Delta network on the other side of this. We also have worked, it says U.S. Economic Development Agency funding. So federal funding is a big issue in 2020. The US EDA got $1.5 billion in the CARES Act. Our region was not eligible to apply for that money because we didn't have an approved regional strategy. We didn't have one because the EDA had never had money before, so it frankly wasn't worth it. And it was a huge process. Well, we got into that process, accelerated it, got a little creative, and by August 12th had received approval from the EDA. And now there are applications going into the federal government from cities and counties and nonprofits in our region, and some public-private collaborations. And the result will be millions of dollars coming from the US EDA into our metro over the next several months. We're moving from talk to action on racial justice and equity, which is really key. Some of the talent work that Greater MSP is involved in is increasingly focused on promotion and advancement of professionals of color. The work around startups and innovation through Forge North has an even stronger racial equity lens. And then the capital side, we're seeing some bold new things happening with the creation of a new community development corporation that will work in North Minneapolis and around Lake Street, and a new venture capital group that's standing up, based in Minneapolis-St. Paul, but it's a national venture capital focused on funding BIPOC founders. And then finally, we're developing innovative solutions that are going to have a regional scale. So I mentioned MBold is being launched this year. We're creating a new inclusive talent pipeline called Connext that will connect youth with employment in this region at all levels. There's a security project which has been quiet, but it continues to grow, and that's 16 companies working together through the Greater MSP partnership to connect with the US Defense Department to increase the amount of contracts that are coming into this metro. And then our talent work is evolving. We've actually seen more companies join the talent retention and attraction effort Make It MSP in 2020 than we have in previous years because they see an even greater value in working together. And there are new projects coming out too. One of them called the Recovery Barometer you'll have access to by the end of next month. And that is a new tool that we'll make available for free that will allow everyone in this region to track our pace of recovery on a range of things that matter, like obviously employment, but also what's happening at the airport, what's happening with hotel rooms. And this will be month by month, so it'll be much more real time than the regional indicators dashboard. And that data will be coming from the organizations that are closest to it. So we'll be working with the Downtown Council in Minneapolis to share out, what office occupancy is looking like month to month. So everybody's getting a clearer view of reality. And if things aren't going well, then we can address it. And if things are going well, we'll have that story as well. So that's a lot of content. There are a lot of things that we can dig into. I've got some questions for you to shape discussion. but also I want to start by addressing any questions that came up over the course of the intro. But some things, what are your reactions to the analysis of the jobs challenge? How would you compare this economic downturn to the Great Recession? What of the regional actions I talked about or others do you think are more important? And then how might you and people who do what you do help drive this recovery?
Terrific. Thank you so much, Peter. Those are great questions to get us started. I would encourage people to ask questions through the Q&A or to start a conversation in the chat box and give some information back to Peter. We will share anything that's in the chat box, Peter, so don't feel like you need to keep an eye on that right at the moment. So we did have a couple questions come in the Q&A. I will just kind of jump into those. So one of them is, how are the job skills needs of companies aligned with the post-secondary institutions? Do the community, vocational, and universities know the skills that are needed? And is there coordination to address these needs?
I think the short answer is not enough. That is a problem that some in this region were working to address for several years prior to 2020. A new group called Real-Time Talent was created about 6 or 7 years ago with the intention of figuring that out. Real-Time Talent has kind of gone in the direction of being more of a data and analytics resource rather than kind of a curriculum broker. But essentially that's an incredibly important problem to solve, because the needs of your companies are changing very quickly. And as automation continues to take a bigger share of what's happening in the economy, we have to have a much more dynamic way of informing our higher ed system about what's needed now. And we need to be able to be communicating directly to people who are making those choices, even earlier on. So a future of work analysis is an important part of what we're doing in the whole Greater MSP partnership. It's pretty clear where the jobs are going to be going away or undermined by automation. It's clear where jobs will be resilient. What we aren't as clear about is where the new jobs are going to be. So any region that can figure out how to have a more real-time, dynamic conversation about what companies actually need, and actually a way to anticipate what companies are going to need before you need it. Because once you post a job, people don't have those skills, it's too late. So we need to actually be able to anticipate. And that's a higher order capability for region. We think that's absolutely a priority that we have to develop.
Great. Thank you. So another question that came in here. So transportation mobility has historically been a driver of downtown job growth, and especially for communities of colors most impacted by the downturn in the economy. Until the pandemic is behind us, what are some of the transformational solutions being considered?
You have to help me get clarity on that question. Transformational solutions considered for, is it transportation or for communities? I'm not 100% clear.
Driver of downtown job growth, and especially communities of colors most impacted. What are some of the transformational solutions being considered?
Well, in terms of kind of restoring downtown vitality, which is also about restoring jobs that many communities of color hold, the public health component of this is really, really critical. Because if we can stabilize our rates, we might be able to move off the governor's must order, must work from home unless you can't. And by just taking a step back from that and adding a little bit more flexibility, DEED has modeling about the thousands of jobs alone that would create. And a lot of those jobs will benefit the downtown environment. That would be a very positive step in kind of getting to the next phase of the downtown recovery, job restoration. I'm not sure if I'm getting to the transportation element of that, but if someone wants to come back at it, I'm happy to try.
Here's another downtown question for you. So what are your thoughts on the real estate in downtown with the latest unrest downtown?
Well, we're seeing, a lot of people are asking questions, and we're talking to Downtown Council and Minneapolis Chamber of Commerce a lot about that. At the same time, we see companies making big long-term bets on downtown. So the Deluxe announcement last week, they're going to be moving their headquarters, into downtown Minneapolis. First of all, that was a nationally competed deal. So the story isn't that it's moving from Shoreview to Minneapolis, it's that Minnesota retained the headquarters, which is incredibly important because we were in competition with other parts of the country for that. So that's a big win. And then the timing of their decision to go into downtown sends a message as well. Goes back to that perspective point. You probably saw all of the articles that were coming out over the past several years about the death of the suburbs. Suburbs are dying, the end of suburban America, everything's moving to core cities. That seemed a little hyperbolic at the time. And now what is the story? Suburbs of the future, everything's moving to the suburbs. Neither of these things are true, right? And I think one of the things that we know from 2020 is that the pandemic has taken away all the great things about cities and left everything else. And so, moving out of the pandemic period will put us in a position of recapturing the trajectory that downtown was on. Not every company wants to be in downtown, but there is a plan that we're going to return to. Things are not going to be the same. We're not exactly sure what that means. Will companies want less space in their office, whether you're in downtown or the suburbs? Possibly, probably. Are some of these parks and other public venues even more important than they were before? That appears to be true. So getting the public safety issue right in Minneapolis is critical, not just in downtown, but the city. Getting, police reform and the racial justice issues right is a core part of that. Peace and justice walk together. And so this is work that needs to be done in parallel. And they're not trade-offs. They both need to happen. They both need to happen at the same time. But in this very divisive moment in our experience as a community and as a country, I think recognizing how interdependent we are in that sense is going to be helpful, because if the places that come together best will probably compete best.
This kind of feeds into another question here is how are you overcoming some of those obstacles in terms of public safety, job preservation, and vitality of downtown business?
Having a plan helps. And so that's especially, Greater MSP has a lot at stake there, and many of our board members, care a great deal about this in their companies. So we've intensified partnership with the Downtown Council and the Minneapolis Chamber. It's also true in St. Paul. I'm sitting in downtown St. Paul right now, and the Downtown Alliance in St. Paul and the major employers here in the St. Paul Chamber of Commerce. It's a similar story, but it's about creating a path, to recovery. It's about communicating in real time what's happening. That's in part what the recovery barometer is about, so we can all stay current on the story. Creating some milestones from a public policy side, working with the governor's office and the governor to say, what would it take to kind of step down from that must order, which would provide some more space. Because as people are able to return, it actually will support some of the public safety aims, but then we will come, the Minneapolis Police Department being involved in that and saying, okay, what proactive steps are going to be taken so that people not only are safe, but feel safe. It's not going to be flipping a switch. This is about kind of moving in the right direction and kind of proving it out at each step.
Terrific, thank you. And we have another question here. We have a lot of big headquarter companies that are largely here because this is where they were founded. So what pipeline do we have for that next generation of companies founded here that could rival the size of Target, Best Buy, Medtronic, and more?
That's a great question. And potentially many people on this call are parts of those companies. I mean, we've seen new companies come into the Fortune 500 with Securian and Polaris. That's the way that our region does it. We don't buy headquartered companies as other states do. We build them. And when you build a company, it happens over a period of time. Patterson Dental, there are a number of companies that have been moving up that list. And when they kind of cross that threshold, it's not quite as splashy as when someone moves from one part of the country to the other, but we've proven in this economy, it's the most sustainable, powerful way to do it, just to keep growing. So it's about supporting the growth of those companies that are in the Fortune 1000 and coming into the Fortune 1000. It's about helping, supporting as a community and as a collective, the large companies we have, because they have to constantly innovate and reinvent. I mean, Target, Best Buy, you go all around to the companies we have. Cargill, is like fundamentally reimagining their, 150-year-old business. So you don't get to stay on that list unless you keep doing things either. And so creating a culture of innovation in this economy to allow our big companies to stay big companies is a top priority. And then to the point of the question, it's about building a robust pipeline of startups and then having an ecosystem that helps them get funding, helps them find talent, helps them with real estate, and get through that fast growth stage. And so one of the kind of strategic adaptations that Greater MSP is doing is really focusing a lot of energy on those fast growth companies in our region, because we know it's a relatively small number of fast growing companies that create most of the jobs, in this market. And so in any market. And so not every one of those companies is going to become Target or United Health Group, but we want a few of them to. And so, we're building cohorts of those fast growth companies in food and agriculture and in med tech and med device and health IT and in other areas to support their growth and really rally and bring together all the capabilities of this region, including access to the big companies to them. Because finding suppliers or procurement from headquarter companies to support the fast growth of startups and growing small companies is an incredibly powerful tool. And that's a differentiating opportunity we have in this region. You don't need venture capital if you have big customers. And so that's one of the things that we're working on.
Right. Yeah, this is a great innovation community. There's a lot of activity in that area. So we have just a minute left. So I'm going to ask you, so what advice would you give to FEI members, so CFO and other financial leaders, about how we can help accelerate the achievement of greater MSP goals? What can we do for you?
Well, there's a question, I think, at the top here in the chat about, what's the process of becoming a civic partner? Could FEI be a candidate for civic partnership? And absolutely. I mean, I'd love to make this more of an introductory conversation and pick up from here. We have CFOs and financial executives. You have a certain view, of the economy, and you play a really critical role in your companies. And there are unique opportunities to shape and drive regional change. We have teams of corporate innovators. We have teams of CEOs. We have teams of CIOs. And so thinking together about, how could financial executives work together to really drive change or even support the analysis component of what we do. That might be a real opportunity to explore. And I'd love to have that conversation. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this out today. I apologize. It's really hard to get a sense of what you all are thinking and reacting in this environment. Maybe someday we'll be together in person. And I would look forward to that.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time today. We appreciate the content. There's certainly a lot of things going on, and we'll do our best to tie into those and support those initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks to all of you.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. This does end the webcast today. If you have earned CPE credits, you will receive the email notification within 7 to 10 business days. Should you have any questions, Roseanne Bump at feitwincities.com can help you answer any of those questions. We do thank you for your participation, and this does end the webinar. We wish you the best of the afternoon. Thank you.